So just to pick up on your point about this trend towards autocracy, David Frum in The Atlantic had this cover story about the idea of autocracy a couple of months ago. And he had this bit where he described the media landscape. He was looking back from the moment where Donald Trump wins his second term. It was days after that election, right? So he had invented this kind of this fictional narrative. And he said, Trump critical media do continue to find elite audiences. Their investigations still win Pulitzer Prizes. Their reporters accept invitations to anxious conferences about corruption, digital journalism standards, the end of NATO, and the rise of authoritarianism. Yet somehow all of this earnest effort feels less and less relevant to American politics. President Trump communicates with the people directly via his Twitter account, ushering supporters toward favorable information at Fox News or Breitbart. Is that a plausible future, or is that a description even perhaps of today?
Yeah, I don't know. I read that piece and thought it was, I like you, was sort of particularly depressed by that passage because it seemed to describe something that was plausible. But I would say sort of two things pointing in the other direction. I mean, the first is it's very important to keep a sense of perspective about the freedom and impunity that journalists have in America and how central that is to everything. You know, yes. I'm very involved with a group called the Committee to Protect Journalists, which I would commend to all of you to support. But what the Committee to Protect Journalists does is it focuses on the suppression and punishment of journalists around the world for doing their jobs, and in Mexico, in Turkey, in Eastern Europe, in China, in all, you know, so many huge countries in the world, journalists are jailed, banned, killed, and we have, none of that has happened, none of that, as David Frum says, is likely to happen in America. The threat, such as it is, really is a threat that people lose interest in truthful journalism, that they you know, prefer alternative non-journalism that isn't real journalism. But we don't face the kinds of threats that journalists face elsewhere, and I don't think we're going to. The other thing, you know, to talk about here is, I mean, just think about what's happened this week in politics. Trump has, you know, just dropped a whole series of his most outrageous positions and plans. And now people who are outraged about Trump, like me, are outraged that he's flip-flopped on everything, but he's flip-flopping in a good direction. And it is something that does tend to happen to presidents of either kind, either party. You campaign on a more extreme platform than you govern on, because when you govern, however badly you govern, the core realities around our relationship with China, around the need to not destroy the economy, sort of start to kick in. And, you know, one hesitates to say, you know, Trump is becoming more responsible, but he's realizing, if he didn't realize it before, that a lot of his plans are preposterous, impossible, and, you know, because he has this quality of nothing he says matters very much, he could as easily go back to them, whether in a political context or not. But, you know, this week, he's sort of been moving away. They've been saying nice things about the press this week. You know, that I don't really like that much more, but the truth is it's better that he says he says he respects the press and doesn't mean it, than when he says the press is the enemy of democracy or enemy of the country, which he also didn't really mean.
Right, because I think that's my fear, is that kind of, that autocratic, that cynicism, where you don't believe anything, and you maybe, the filter bubble, there's an extension of that you guys have probably, the ideological matrix. So then you have this small network of places where you go to get information, and you don't even believe those. And so that cynicism is something that, you know, good can't possibly survive in an atmosphere where you just are like, screw this, I don't believe anything anymore. So that's something that that's just a psychological and emotional fatigue on readers that Trump could have an influence on in a way that was just too hard to combat on a day-to-day basis of just giving up.